I had always been close with my younger brother, Ethan. Despite the 6-year gap between us, we understood each other in ways no one else in the family did. When we were younger, he'd follow me around like a shadow, eager to listen to my stories and seek my advice on everything from school to video games. But things changed when I left for university. Distance crept in. Not intentional, just the natural course of life. The daily interactions faded, replaced by occasional texts and hurried phone calls. I could hear him growing up through his voice, which had deepened over the years, and in the way he talked about his world. This summer was supposed to be our chance to reconnect. My parents, eager for a break, had asked me to watch over Ethan while they visited some old friends in a neighboring town for a week. I had expected things to feel the same as before. But when I stepped through the front door of our house, suitcase in hand, I felt a shift in the air. Ethan had changed. He wasn't the same lanky, wide-eyed boy I had left behind. He had grown taller, his features sharper, his posture more self-assured. His once playful energy had mellowed into something more reserved. It wasn't just physical. His whole demeanor felt different, more distant. "Hey, stranger," I greeted with a grin, trying to bridge the gap that had grown between us. "Hey," he replied, a half-smile tugging at his lips, but there was something guarded in his eyes. I brushed it off at first. Maybe it was just the awkwardness of reuniting after a long time. Or maybe he was going through that phase, teenagers and their inexplicable moods. That night, as I settled into my old bedroom, I noticed how the house had changed too. My parents had redecorated a little, new cushions, different curtains, but Ethan's room, the one down the hall from mine, felt eerily quiet. When we were younger, I would hear him playing games, talking to friends, sometimes even sneaking into my room just to chat when he couldn't sleep. Now, there was only silence. Over the next few days, I observed him closely. Something about him was off, not in a bad way, just different. He was more composed than I remembered, his words measured. He didn't laugh as easily as before, and when he did, it felt restrained, like he was holding something back. He was still polite, still my little brother, but there was a new weight to him, a quiet intensity that I couldn't quite place. At first, I let it go. I focused on making our time together as normal as possible, cooking dinner, watching movies, reminiscing about childhood memories. He played along, but I could feel his distance. Like he was present, but his mind was elsewhere. One evening, while washing the dishes together, I decided to address it. "You're quiet," I said, passing him a plate to dry. He shrugged. "Just thinking." "About what?" "Stuff," he said vaguely, then added life. "School. You being back." I paused, wiping my hands on a towel. "I feel like I don't know you anymore." He looked at me then, his dark eyes unreadable. "You left." It wasn't an accusation, but it hit like one. I sighed. "I didn't leave you, Ethan. Life happened. University happened." "I know," he said, but something in his tone suggested otherwise. As the days passed, I noticed other things. The way he would watch me when he thought I wasn't looking. The slight tension in his body when I sat close to him on the couch. The way his voice would drop, just a little when he spoke my name. It was subtle, but undeniable. One night, we were watching a movie together. The living room was dimly lit, the glow from the screen flickering across his face. He sat next to me on the couch, closer than usual. Our shoulders barely touched, but I was hyper-aware of the space between us, or the lack of it. At one point, I shifted slightly, and my hand accidentally brushed against his. It was a fleeting touch, nothing significant, but I felt him stiffen beside me. I glanced at him, and in that moment, he met my eyes. There was something in his gaze, something searching, something hesitant. The air between us changed. I swallowed, suddenly feeling the need to break the silence. "You okay?" He hesitated before nodding. "Yeah." But he didn't move away. And neither did I. I never imagined my summer at home would feel so strange. Not in a bad way, just different. I had been away at university for years, and coming back was supposed to be familiar, comforting. Yet something had shifted, and I felt it most around Ethan. My little brother wasn't so little anymore. At 17, he had grown taller, his once boyish face now carrying the sharpness of impending adulthood. The playful, wide-eyed kid I remembered had been replaced by someone more reserved, more thoughtful, like he had lived a lifetime in the few years I had been away. We had always been close, inseparable when we were younger, but my time at university had put distance between us, a natural consequence of growing up. I had expected things to fall right back into place, but instead, there was something new between us, something I couldn't quite name. And then one evening, he asked me to do something I never saw coming. It was a warm summer night, the kind where the air buzzed with the scent of grass and the distant hum of crickets. I was curled up on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when Ethan walked in. "Hey," he said casually, hands shoved into his hoodie pockets. "Hey yourself," I replied, looking up. He hesitated for a moment, shifting his weight between his feet. I wanted to ask you something." I sat up, intrigued. "Go on." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he hadn't outgrown. "There's this party tomorrow night, at Jordan's place." Jordan was one of his friends, someone I vaguely remembered from his stories. "Okay," I said, waiting for him to continue. I was thinking. He took a deep breath, then let it out in a rush. "Would you go with me?" I blinked. "To a high school party?" He nodded, still avoiding my eyes. I laughed softly. "Ethan, I'm 23. Don't you think I'll stick out a little?" "Not if you go as my girlfriend," he said quickly. The room went quiet. I stared at him, unsure if I had heard him right. "What?" He finally met my gaze, his expression unreadable. "Just for the night. Just pretend." He hesitated, exhaling sharply. "Look, there's this girl I used to talk to, and she's going to be there with her new guy. Everyone's expecting me to show up with someone, and I don't want to look like a loser." I tilted my head. "So you want me to be your fake girlfriend?" "Yeah." He swallowed, looking away again. "Just for the party." It was ridiculous, completely absurd, and yet something about the way he asked, the vulnerability hidden beneath his casual tone, made me pause. I should have said no, but instead I found myself saying, "All right, just for the night." The next evening, I stood in front of my mirror, smoothing down the fabric of my dress. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple black number that hugged my figure well. I didn't know why I had taken so much time getting ready. It wasn't like this was real. Still, my stomach fluttered with a nervous energy I couldn't quite shake. Ethan knocked on my door before poking his head in. His eyes skimmed over me, something unreadable flashing across his face before he smirked. "Wow, you really committed to this, huh?" I rolled my eyes. "You wanted a fake girlfriend. This is what you get." He stepped into the room, dressed in dark jeans and a fitted button-down that made him look older than 17. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he had been running his hands through it all evening. "Ready?" he asked. I grabbed my purse and nodded. "Let's go." Jordan's house was packed. Music pounded through the walls, and the air smelled of beer and cheap cologne. The moment we stepped inside, heads turned. Ethan slid his hand into mine, his grip firm but not forceful. I almost pulled away out of instinct, but I remembered what I had agreed to. His friends noticed us immediately. "Yo, Ethan." One of them, Caleb, I think, grinned, eyeing our joined hands. "Damn, man, you actually brought someone." Ethan chuckled, squeezing my hand slightly. "Told you." Caleb's gaze slid to me, then back to Ethan. "She's hot. Where'd you find her?" "College," Ethan said smoothly. "We met through a mutual friend." I played along, smiling politely. "Yeah, Ethan's been talking about this party for weeks." I had to see what all the hype was about. Caleb laughed. Man, you got lucky. I felt Ethan's fingers tighten around mine. Yeah, he murmured, though he wasn't looking at Caleb anymore. He was looking at me. As the night wore on, I played my role well. I let Ethan keep his arm around my waist, leaned into him when his friends teased him, laughed at the right moments. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like an act. Maybe it was the way his hand rested at the small of my back, warm and steady. Maybe it was the way his voice softened when he spoke to me, like he wasn't just playing pretend. Maybe it was the way he looked at me when he thought I wouldn't notice, like he was seeing me for the first time. Or maybe it was the way I caught myself looking at him. Near midnight, I stepped outside for some air. The backyard was quieter, the music muffled behind the house. A few minutes later, Ethan found me. Hey, he said, leaning against the railing beside me. You okay? I nodded, exhaling slowly. Just needed a break. He was quiet for a moment before saying, Thanks for doing this. I smiled. Anytime. Silence stretched between us, comfortable yet charged. Then, softly, he said, It didn't feel fake. I turned to him, my breath catching. He was close, closer than he should have been. Ethan, I started, but he shook his head. I know, he murmured. I didn't expect this to feel so real. Neither had I. I could have laughed it off, could have brushed it away as nothing more than a silly game. But standing there, under the glow of the porch light, with Ethan looking at me like I was something more than just his sister, I couldn't. I didn't know what this meant. I didn't know if it meant anything at all. But for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to how things were. The night after the party, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moments over and over in my mind. I had told myself it was just a silly favor for Ethan, something harmless. But the way he looked at me when he said, it didn't feel fake, that stayed with me. His voice had been quiet, unsure, as if he himself was realizing something for the first time. I had felt it too, the strange undercurrent of tension neither of us had spoken about. I told myself it was just the excitement of the party, the adrenaline of pretending. That was all. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen, standing by the counter, making coffee. He glanced up when he saw me, and for a second, something flickered in his expression, something softer, warmer. Morning, he said, sliding a mug toward me. I hesitated before taking it. Morning. He watched me as I took a sip, then smirked. You know, you looked really nice last night. I swallowed, nearly choking on the coffee. Oh. He shrugged, but his gaze lingered. Yeah, I don't think I ever told you that. It was just a compliment. That's all. But the way he said it, slow, deliberate, like he wanted to make sure I heard it properly, made my stomach twist in a way I wasn't prepared for. I let out a small, awkward laugh, setting the mug down. You were a pretty good fake boyfriend, too. Very convincing. His smirk deepened. Yeah, maybe too convincing. For a moment, he didn't say anything. His gaze dipped slightly, like he was thinking about something he wasn't sure he should say. Then he reached for his own coffee, taking a slow sip before murmuring, Maybe it wasn't all an act. I should have laughed, should have brushed it off as a joke. But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my coffee and left the kitchen, pretending I hadn't heard him. After that night, things between us started to shift. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then it became impossible to ignore. Ethan started acting differently, not just toward me, but in general. He carried himself with more confidence, spoke with more certainty. But the biggest change was how he treated me. It wasn't just the compliments, though those came often, slipping out casually, like they had always been a natural part of our conversations. That dress looks good on you, he'd say, even if I was just wearing an old sundress I'd thrown on without thinking. Your hair looks nice like that, he'd mention, even when I had barely brushed it. "You should smile more," he told me one afternoon, completely unprompted. "It suits you." At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself he was just being playful, but there was something about the way he looked at me now, something more focused. And it wasn't just the words, it was his actions, the way he moved around me. Ethan started holding doors open for me, always making sure to walk on the side of the sidewalk closest to the street. He grabbed things from high shelves without me even having to ask. If we were out together, he'd place his hand lightly on my lower back when guiding me through a crowd, his touch barely there but noticeable enough to send my heart into a confused frenzy. One day, we were out running errands, and a guy in the store casually glanced in my direction. Ethan noticed. His entire posture shifted, shoulders tensing just slightly. And when the guy walked past and gave me another look, Ethan moved closer, stepping into the space between us like an unspoken barrier. I raised an eyebrow at him. "What was that?" Ethan looked at me, completely unfazed. "What?" "You stepped in front of me." His expression was unreadable. "So?" I let out a disbelieving laugh. "Were you trying to block him?" His jaw tensed slightly, but his voice was casual. "Maybe." I crossed my arms, staring at him. "Why?" He finally turned to me, his gaze steady. "Because I didn't like the way he was looking at you." A strange silence settled between us. I should have laughed it off. I should have called him ridiculous. But the way he said it, the quiet possessiveness in his voice, it unsettled me in a way I couldn't quite define. "Ethan," I said, my voice softer now, unsure. He held my gaze for a moment, then shook his head, as if realizing something. "Forget it," he muttered, turning away. But I didn't forget. I couldn't, because it kept happening. One afternoon, we went to a small cafe in town. Ethan had insisted, saying he wanted to get out of the house for a bit, and I figured it was harmless. But when we got there, something felt off. The waitress, she was around my age, maybe a little older, kept smiling at Ethan. Not just polite smiling, but the kind that lingered, the kind that meant something. And Ethan, he barely noticed. She asked him how he was doing, if he had plans for the summer,